Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Give yourself a round of applause. Put some energy.
Yeah, some energy. We're the anti-fascist people. We have a real treat for you to begin the reading today. We have a very special guest, Francisco Herrera. He is a culture warrior. He works with the Caminante Cultural Foundation. Caminante Cultural Foundation.
He's a father of 4.
And he is just phenomenal. Please give him a warm welcome, Francisco Herrera.
All right, buenas tardes. Let me do a celebration strum for you guys. Congratulations, you, we, and you know you in Latin is actually the plural, so all of us together, right? I'm gonna actually, all right, Douglas. There's a great band called America. Have you heard of that one? God bless America, band that I love. No, I'm kidding. All right. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Raise your hand if you ever heard the song before. All right. Although you've usually heard it in a waltz. Y por eso right? Today we're gonna do it polka style. Let's sing it with me. Can you say, y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Me as in do, re, mi. All right. But the other thing about singing in Spanish, just focus on the vowels. Y, a, o. Don't worry about the syllables. Just chime right in as you can. This is not about tuning or a tuning fork. This is about singing. Ready? A group that sings together organizes together. ¿Se puede? Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. One more time. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Órale. De colores se visten los campos en la primavera. Vamos, de colores los pajarillos que vienen. Eso, loud. De colores es el arco iris que vemos lucir. ¡Vamos! Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. All right. This is the organizing verse. I don't know if you ever called it that before, but I discovered it one day as I was meditating. Because to beat back fascism, we gotta all get organized, starting with the rooster. Canta el gallo con él. All right, the rooster is one of those bilingual animals, because in English, how does the rooster crow? Cacadoodle-doo, but in Spanish, caca is shit, so it's like, doesn't make sense. So in Spanish, the rooster crows kikiriki. So, canta el gallo con el kiri. Nice. But as her story has always shown us, it's really the hen that gets the thing going, right? La gallina con el cara. But in these times of fascism, We have to even get the chicks organized. Los polluelos con el pío, 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 pío. Together, fuerte. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Nice. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Last time. Y por eso nice. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. All right, as we get this show on the road without tires but with seats, I want to share this song from our coming up album called End of War. You believe in the end of war? So I thought we've spent way too much time criticizing, moaning, and awing, and complaining about whoever the next idiot is, or right? And not enough time really seeing what we're looking for. What are we working for? So I thought we could write this fantasy song called End of War. What a peace economy might look like. Okay, so we abolished war a few decades ago, right? Imagine it, see it. We abolished war a few decades ago. There's still a few poor souls that are trying to make money from war, but it's no longer profitable. It doesn't work. Then this might be a little bit what it might look like. You won't believe what I heard. We won't believe it. War is not the answer anymore. It never was. You won't believe what I heard. Would you believe it? We don't have to cultivate our lives for war. Companies now have budgets that put people first. Working folks are making tools to listen to the earth. You won't believe what I heard, but it might be true. People work now for the common good. That's the refrain. Ready? People work now for the common good. Let me hear it one more time. People work now for the common good. Na 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 na. You won't believe what I heard. Would you believe it? Nobody is signing up for war. We got together and decided not to do it. Just like the guy who dreamt it once before. Gardens are now growing where there once were guns and tanks. Bees are pollinating where the flowers have come back. You won't believe what I heard, but it might be true. People work now for the common good. One more time. People work now for the common good. Na 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 na. La li 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 lu 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 lu. La ba da ba 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 da la 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 la. Ra ta 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 ra ta 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 ra ta ta ra. Ra pa 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 ba re boo be doo. Na 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 na. You won't believe what I heard. Would you believe it? The working class are now becoming one. We realized war was just a rich man's racket. They made billions while we filled their body bags. Where there were schools for torture, people now work out. Families have time to play and sickness has stepped out. You won't believe what I heard, but it might be true. People work now for the common good. One more time. People work now for the common good. Na 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 na. You won't believe what I heard. Would you believe it? We all left the profiteers behind. Once the 99% decided not to kill. Corporations simply could no longer steal. Instead of taxes for the war, we're funding schools and parks, science, libraries and sports, arts and poli-sci. My major. We organized our neighborhoods and lost our fear. And war's profit margin disappeared. You won't believe what I heard, but we can make it true. When people work now for the common good, yeah. People work now for the common good. Two more times, strong. People common good, yeah, yeah. People work now for the common good.
Hello, everybody. You thought you had already heard all you had to from me today, but no. Welcome to the second gathering of the We Don't Need No Stinking Fascism collective of artists and creatives as we look at how to step into the world that faces us with creativity and a spirit of delight and determination that takes on trouble indirectly through the arts in the ways that I think undermine it, and with our current administration, often sometimes things like humor are what get just right under the skin in the best ways possible. So, but we're also calling ourselves, I think, Francisco Herrera. Thank you so much for opening, and I know you're opening the second half too. But I think also pull us together in things that we can literally bring if we memorize the songs, if we memorize the poems, that we can literally bring into the moments when we show up, as we will increasingly need to, and in different venues, to call forward our vision of the world. I want to say a little bit about first of all, I just want to tell you a little bit about Francisco, because I don't think you got his bio, but the collection of people who are here today are a lot of homegrown talent, people who are part of this community, this church community. But then we pulled in a couple ringers who just felt in such deep sympathy. And Francisco, I think it was Mike and Mari who heard you sing at an event and were like, at the next arts gathering, we've got to rope this one in. So thank you so much for allowing yourself to be roped in. Francisco is a Bay Area artist and activist, as you might have guessed, who grew up in the border town of Calexico and who has straddled two worlds. He writes, "My siblings and cousins and I used to sing rancheras and some mariachi at family parties, and when we got a little older, we started some garage rock bands." But he also got involved in church and in the Latin American School of Liberation Theology, right? That sees the church and even Jesus central as figures of liberation, and the call of that to do work of social justice in the world as part of your moral commitments. I think something that most of us share in this room. He's performed at the San Francisco Public Library Children's Center for the last half dozen years, and for the last few years, Francisco has been the director of the San Francisco Day Laborer Program, which has recently been renamed El Nuevo Sol. So we're really thrilled to have you open both parts of our gathering today. Thank you for being here. And to close us out, too, in song. So I want to read a description. The artists who came together from the community to create today's program wrote a little bit about what the philosophy and the thinking behind and the frame around today is. They write, "We human beings have many weaknesses, but we have one undeniable strength. We are by nature a social and cooperative species. In this era, when the future of our world hangs so precariously in the balance, this cooperative potential is our lifeline. But fascism, the doctrine favored by some of the most rapacious exploiters of this capitalist system, is based on and can only exist on creating and enforcing divisions along racial, gender, ethnic, and other lines. Fascism is a death sentence for humanity. As artists, our ardent ambition is to use our expression to lift the minds and spirits to pursue the truth that the destiny of all of us human beings are bound together, and that our well-being can only be secured through the universal recognition of and practice in our responsibility for one another and to one another. We are determined to be part of a broad anti-fascist movement, which is beginning to develop and must grow dramatically in the coming months to confront the dangers it represents for this country and humanity as a whole. I think we can all say amen and amen. So, in the spirit of what upsets and uproots fascism, I want to invite one of the perspectives. I want to invite forward Mike and Mari. Michael and Mari have been performing in the Bay Area theaters and clubs for years. They are part of our church family. During the pandemic, they created a weekly radio show called The Mike and Mari Show, which ran on community radio stations for 3 years. For a sampling of their shows and more information, you can visit www.themikeandmarishow.com. Welcome.
The Reverend Vanessa Ruth Southern. A happy President's Day, everybody. Nothing? Well, this first sketch is called President's Day Sale. Hey, everybody, it's your crazy Uncle Sam.
And Lady Liberty, but you may call me Melania.
And we're coming your way for a going out of business sale. America's lost her lease to some high-tech oligarch. We're hacking and hewing government departments and passing the savings on to you. Now, national parks, coastal land reserves, Indian reservations, all for sale, price to move.
You love the Constitution? Buy one amendment, get one free.
Except the Second Amendment, which is already sold to the NRA.
We're rolling back prices. We're rolling back restrictions.
Hey, been itching to get your hands on that government contract? Ambassador appointment, judicial confirmation, and cabinet positions? If you got the bitcoins, buddy, you got the job.
You want it? We've got it. Financial records, national secrets, classified documents that I found in the Donald's bathroom. Can be yours for just rubles on the dollar.
EPA? No way, we're giving it away. You got the slush fund, friend, you can keep the slush.
We've got one-of-a-kind items at one-of-a-kind prices.
The bald eagle, the Statue of Liberty, the Liberty Bell, sold as is.
Portraits of the Obamas.
All things must go. Make America great again with one-of-a-kind savings.
We cut up the middleman and sell the government direct to you.
Make us an offer we can't refuse. No value too sacred, no offer too small.
So come on down to the corner of K Street and 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Located between oligarchs are us and the CIA's Contra House of Cocaine.
The first 50 people get a nude selfie with me, Lady Libertine.
And come on by and get a taste of the original Andrew Jackson cheese wheel.
How do we do it? We're crazy.
So come on down to Crazy Uncle Sam and Lady Liberty's going out of business President's Day sale.
Or not. I really don't care.
Gregory Stevens is our next speaker. He's the founder of the Unitarian Universalist Eco-Socialist Network and an organizer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. They have a master's of divinity from Claremont School of Theology and sell their labor power to California Interfaith Power and Light. Welcome, Gregory.
Okay, so I'm going to take up more time than I was given. Sorry, Bruce. With two things, I got nervous when I started to see how many people were here. And so I had to pull out the Bible to ground myself in some sort of like scriptural background, and then I can go off. But before, I want to do I did this on Wednesday, if you were there at the Interfaith Council meeting, or Thursday, excuse me. But I'm going to do it again with something else, a call and response. I grew up a Baptist, and we used to do call and responses all the time. And Asada Shakur has this really amazing quote. So I'm going to read something, and then I want you to repeat it after me, okay? It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. Amen. Okay, so this is funny. At a Unitarian church, I had to run to the library to find a Bible. I couldn't just go to the pews. And it's also not the version I want. So I'm holding the Bible and reading my phone. But it's supposed to give this allure of like scripture or something. I don't know. Now listen, you rich people. This is James. This is Jesus' brother saying this. James chapter 5. Now listen, you rich people. Weep and wail because of the misery that is coming to you. Your wealth has rotted and moths have eaten your clothes. Your gold and silver are corroded. The corrosion will testify against you and eat your flesh like fire. Jesus. You have hoarded wealth in the last days. Look, the wages you failed to pay the workers who mowed your fields are crying out against you. The cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord Almighty. He keeps going, but that's ruthless. So what I'm about to say is less ruthless, but intense. And they don't make podiums for tall people, so excuse me if I look down too much. Philosophers have interpreted the world, but the purpose of Unitarian Universalism is to change the world. When I was growing up, my Aunt Cindy, she would take me and my cousins to a local arcade, and there was this big machine, and it said whack-a-mole, and there were about 9 holes and little clowns that lived in each hole, and when one would pop up, you would take this big, meaty Thor hammer, and you'd slap the clown back into the hole. And it was the greatest game of all time. Too often, though, in our social movement milieu, which is a word I love, especially in our UU ecosystem, the theories and strategies of resistance look more like a game of whack-a-mole rather than principled and organized resistance. Showing up to random events to whack homophobia or whack racism or whack climate change isn't ever going to get the job done. Whack-a-mole resistance misses the ways all of these issues are interlocked and inherently interconnected to the same fundamental problem, capitalism, or as I like to call it, moneyism. This type of resistance, the whack-a-mole type, also ignores the long history of anti-capitalist, pro-social, moneyism versus socialism, the pro-social workers' resistance tradition, one that has many years of experience, developed tons of theory, and has actually existing socialist projects to this day that you can reflect and learn from. Short-term immediate actions, whack-a-mole, they feel good, and they build public awareness and momentum. While strategic resistance, revolutionary organizing, channels that energy into a long-term structural change. We need long-term structural change over and above simple awareness of injustice. It's one thing to be aware, it's another to devote yourself to structural change, a much longer and all-encompassing form of struggle for a better world. I didn't know how to weave this in here with poetic language, but indigenous people talk about the actions you do today, you should think about 7 generations from now. So whatever you're doing now is going to impact 7 generations from now. So when you have an organizational form, you have the ability to hold memory of what happened 6 generations ago, 4 or 5 generations, and you can learn from that and keep that struggle going. If you just show up and whack-a-mole, you don't know who whacked the mole before you. The billionaire class is waging a war on the working class. With this new administration, the curtain is pulled back as the oligarchs force their way, bull in a china shop vibe, ruthlessly smashing the working class victory. All the victories we've made in the past since the civil rights movement have been rewritten or kicked out the window, or that's the plan. They're doing so blatantly without shame, and they're doing it, and it's terrifying. But it distracts from the ultimate concern, the system, capitalism. It's far more important that we fight this larger system instead of wasting our time trying to fight and push back against every random stupid thing that orange clown says. Lots of people right now, for example, are scared about, or they're embarrassed that they drive a Tesla. But I have to admit, driving a different brand of car won't stop the capitalist world system. It's important to note, too, that this critique stands true with the corporatist model of capitalist leadership. Not just the warlord oligarchs. The Democrats do much of the same, but in a more refined manner. At the bare minimum, Dems recognize the need for a safety net, which is great. It's to create more efficient workers, though, and belittle our anger from revolution. It's an obvious improvement, though, so it is a contradiction to wrestle with. Trump instead will grab the mic and say, "Make Gaza beachfront property." And it's terrifying to think that someone would say that and say, "We're going to forcibly move you and send you to Egypt." Democrats will stand up in front of you and say, "We are working on a peace deal," where there is an entire year of no peace deal, just weapons and weapons and weapons. I often wonder what's worse. Someone who sneakily hides their genocidal actions behind progressive language and rainbow flags, or an orange psychopath that openly revels in death and destruction. I do know that nobody looks up in the sky in Palestine and goes, "A black woman sent the bomb, wonderful." The two leading Democrats, one of which could barely speak or function and stand in public, cared more about saving face than ending the genocide and fighting Trump. If Democrats actually cared about stopping Trump's billionaire agenda, they wouldn't roll out the red carpet for him with a genocide. The solution to Trump or Biden's presidency is not nicer billionaires or bluer millionaires. The solution is that those who run society build society's wealth. We, the workers, are the ones who should run the country. Workers have built the world, and workers should run the world. I've been working on this campaign with the UU Eco-Socialist Network to turn PG&E into a nonprofit. And one of the things that we were talking about the other day is if you ever drive in like Northern California, out in the middle of nowhere, there'll be some big mountain that you could never walk up or climb up, and you'll see clear-cut trees and a power line that goes right through it. And I can guarantee Patricia Poppy never was ever around that. It was the workers who did that insane thing. It's the workers who established these things. It's the workers who deserve to run them. If you were to go to a PG&E board meeting and say, "Hey, how do you install that thing?" they wouldn't know. If you were to ask the worker who installed it, they would absolutely know. And therefore, they should manage it. So in this way, we do have different goals. The goal of capitalist production, which is the Democrats and the Republican way of thinking, is to make as much profit as quickly as possible. This is a murderous goal that has destroyed the planet and people. The alternative goal of a socialist economy is to meet the needs of people in the long term and in a sustainable fashion. People's need versus people's greed. Insatiable greed is wiping out the planet. Insatiable greed has given us two options that Rosa Luxemburg taught us: socialism or barbarism. Our current capitalist system is based on the annihilation of the planet, our entire basis of existence. Therefore, socialism is more than an ethical necessity, it's a historical material necessity if we hope to even continue life on Earth. To claim that another world is possible, after all, is not the same as claiming that another world is absolutely necessary. This necessity is also made most clear through the capitalist-induced climate crisis. Trump has been chanting like, I forgot her name, "Drill, baby, drill." What was her name? Sarah Palin. Ooh, that stings when you say that name. Drill, baby, drill. But I want you to know the Biden and Harris administration signed off on more oil deals than any president did before them. Also, funding a genocide is probably the least green thing you could possibly do. To avoid excessive warming, as well as the many severe environmental threats produced by capitalism, it is necessary to shift from fossil fuels to renewable energy and to end the genocide in Gaza. But the capitalist class, Biden, Harris, and the Republicans, is driven to protect its investments in coal, oil, and gas, as well as the associated industries. They will do whatever it takes to hold power, even if that means destroying much of the world. The struggle to adapt and mitigate the impacts of global warming is therefore a class struggle. It is a struggle for power, not a struggle over morality or individual consumer choices. Buy a reusable water bottle. All people are not equally responsible for climate change. Let me say that again. The climate struggle is a class struggle because it is a struggle for power. The ruling class, the class currently running the show, are using state power to enrich the few at the expense of our entire planet and our species. To fix this, the working class must take power back and organize society around the mutual well-being of all people and our planet, instead of around profit. Planning for the people versus planning for more profit. Symptoms, like Donald Trump, are the observable effects of a deeper problem. Root causes are the underlying reasons that lead to these symptoms. Symptoms are usually visible and immediate. Whack-a-mole. You'll see the symptom and you'll whack it down. I have diabetes, and so if I have low blood sugar, you could address the low blood sugar, but that doesn't address the diabetes. You have to address the diabetes, not just the low blood sugar. That's also why some of these people call these ideas that I'm saying radical, which just means to get to the root of things. And the root is capitalism, moneyism. Promoting the well-being of the planet and all beings shouldn't be understood as radical or scary in my mind. It's actually just an ancient Buddhist prayer. May all beings be well. It's also deeply connected to the Unitarian Universalist tradition. The Universalist side of our tradition is about the universality of love and compassion extended to all. We could build an entire society around this ethic. It's called communism, and socialism is the pathway there. We cannot stop capitalists like Musk from destroying the world with petitions begging him to act better. We cannot stop capitalists like Trump with UU the vote for a different capitalist. Mutual aid potlucks taking care of each other, great, won't stop the billionaires. Calling your senator's office who've already been bought out by big oil, won't stop the big oil. Marching on Market Street's fun, but it won't intimidate a capitalist. Documentary screenings won't. Eating local food won't. Taking shorter showers won't. Eating less animals won't. Building, here it is, building independent working class organizations to train, educate, and give firsthand experience in the struggle for a socialist seizure of power to bring about the beloved community we so desperately deserve has historically proven to be the only effective tool in dismantling the most vile system to ever exist. And when you say something that intense, you have to back it up with a quote from Martin Luther King. We must recognize that we can't solve our problem now until there is a radical redistribution of economic and political power. This means a revolution of values and other things. We must see now that the evils of racism, economic exploitation, and militarism are all tied together. You can't really get rid of one without getting rid of all the others. You could whack a mole, but how are you going to get rid of all? The whole structure of American life must be changed. America is a hypocritical nation, and we must put our own house in order. 1967. In this way, we are organized and serious about making social change. Anything else isn't taking the task at hand seriously. Whack-a-mole resistance isn't serious strategy. We must recognize that repeating the same actions over and over is not making progress. It's especially not making progress at the scale necessary for transformation of society, especially for one to be centered on planetary health instead of profit. Don't get me wrong, it feels good to whack a mole, but it doesn't contribute to the larger transformation of society in any long-term material way. For example, whack-a-mole resistance will get you DEI programs, but not Black liberation. As an Apple employee, you'll learn how to give a land acknowledgement about the importance of hiring more diverse staff, all the while sourcing products from the child worker slaves in the global South. DEI will get you more colorful faces in the places of exploitative power. It won't nurture collective liberation from the rotten capitalist system. Again, I say, philosophers have interpreted the world. The purpose of Unitarian Universalism is to change it. Now, there's no pretending Trump is way worse than the blue capitalists. But if our analysis doesn't critique the underlying system, the machine that all these whack-a-mole clowns are in, we'll continue playing whack-a-mole, never making any progress except for a really high score. The goal is to defeat the entire game, not make a high score. Unplug the system. We've got to unplug the entire whack-a-mole system to truly defeat the game. If the culprit is capitalism, the solution is socialism. We cannot defeat socialism or capitalism by voting blue, donating time or money to the Sierra Club, or marching in circles with poster boards with great slogans. These are just disparate and divided movements. They all lack a unified intentionality. They have proved themselves incapable of succeeding and taking power back for the working class. Socialism, aka really deep democracy carried to all aspects of life, can only be achieved by a mass movement of millions of people organized to fight for what is rightfully theirs. We, the people of the United States, desperately need and deserve a new government and a new system run by the multinational working class and their interests. The struggle to defeat capitalism and begin building a socialist society is the most pressing issue faced by humanity today. And to close out, what are we as socialists fighting for? A world where everyone has quality public housing, clean drinking water, solid public transit, a fabulous education system, healthy local foods, clean powered energy, a brilliant local Unitarian church for all, and comfy clothes for all. We're fighting for the well-being of all people. We're not fighting for profits. We're fighting for the planet. And it's our faith that calls us to this good trouble. Let's get to work.
Take a deep breath. Let it sink into your bones. Our next performer is Dennis Adams. Dennis has been many things: an Army veteran, an ex-con, that's a good story if he hasn't told it to you, an actor and a director, a professional mime, and a clown. Poindexter was the name of his clown identity for 47 years. He's also, many of you may know, a worship associate and a member of the choir here, and enjoys writing reflections for the congregation. His new constant companion and little ambassador of joy is Oreo. Dennis has been working on a serious clown memoir, if that can happen. Where's Dennis?
The last words that Jerry Garcia said to Grateful Dead bandmate Bob Weir was always a hoot, right after their last show at Soldiers Field in Chicago in August of '95. W.F. Herrick's sculpture, Democracy, since 1990 at Courthouse Square in Burlington, Vermont, my hometown, is a huge granite puzzle which spells out the word democracy. Right across the street is Nectar's, a restaurant and nightclub. It's one of the Burlington bars where the band Fish learned and practiced their maniacally upbeat musical style. Nectar's, food, music, dancing, what's not to love? So I'm out and about on this hot August night, and I get myself an order of French fries and gravy from Nectar's. Looking for a place to sit, I spy the democracy puzzle sculpture, and acting like Humpty Dumpty, I climb up and sit atop it and commence eating. I'm replaying the recent Grateful Dead concert I saw. Bob Dylan opened for them, and it was outdoors in Highgate, Vermont, along with about 60,000 fellow Deadheads. It was a great show, but a large part of the crowd was more into beer than music, it seemed. And a little bit of rowdiness broke out when a bunch of non-ticket holders started pushing the fence enclosure over to get in. Instead of freaking out, the state police on duty helped pull the fence down so no one would get hurt. We all flooded in, and as I said, it was a great show. Still, somehow more disconnected mood was palpable. So I'm thinking this, and a strange Marvin the Martian voice asked me what I'm doing. No, worse, what I think I'm doing up there. Well, smart-ass Dennis is never far away when confronted with an authority figure, so I say, I think I'm eating French fries and gravy and enjoying the hell out of myself. Well, he says, you can't, in his perplexed and cryptic way. Being a quick study, I've noticed his security guard outfit and asked him why we're having this discussion. He says, you need to get down or I'm calling the cops. I'm usually pretty zen and grounded, even non-argumentative, but I had to ask what he thought the proper authorities would do to me for eating French fries and gravy on a democracy puzzle. He sputtered away, I guess to call the cops, And I, choosing safety over valor, climbed down and continue on into my night. I'd rather not be busted for the aberrant behavior of eating French fries and gravy on a puzzle. I realized this hot August night, I'd noticed a lot of people kind of crying and carrying on, hugging and sobbing. No laughter. I flow with the crowd towards City Hall Park, and I see they're all lighting candles and singing songs, because the news from California is that Jerry Garcia has died, unexpectedly, in, of all places, a rehab facility. He died not of an overdose, but congestive heart failure at 53. Sifting through the crowd, months since I'd seen them at that show, and now poof, like Kaiser Soze, gone in an instant. In the morning crowd that night, we were devastated, as though there was no air in our lungs. But we sang Ripple, Sugar Magnolia, Fire on the Mountain, others. The local radio station played nothing but Grateful Dead for the night. Looking at City Hall, right there, I remember the kerfuffle my clown character Poindexter caused when the floundering founder of Operation Rescue, an outside group of anti-abortionist folks, Randall Terry, came to town. And he demanded that he have a press conference at City Hall. Well, it was a very slow day for clowning, so I packed up my stuff, and on a whim, I went to the supermarket and bought a pie tin with a crust in it and a can of whipped cream. I enter City Hall like a clown assassin, and in full view of an outer perimeter undercover cop, I commence to make a whipped cream pie. Cop man sputters, "What do you think you're going to do with that?" I shrug and smile and walk into the City Hall chambers. As I enter, all the cameras turn to Poindexter from Terry, and pandemonium breaks out. "Do it, Poindexter! Please do it!" They're encouraging me to throw the pie, but two plainclothesmen step in front of me and say, "If you throw that pie, you're going to be arrested for assault." Another guy yells out, "Hey, it's his lunch. Leave him alone." So I make my way to the front row and sit down with a potential felony rap in my lap. And like every special moment, I've caused some sort of hypocrite to be upstaged by a clown. Eventually, the original cop asked me for the pie, and after a moment of hesitation, I acquiesced and gave it to him. The tin was now full of melted whipped cream. The next day, the Burlington Free Press ran a story that said Randall Terry, anti-abortion activist and founder of Operation Rescue, came to Burlington City Hall yesterday in what could only be described as a circus-like atmosphere, complete with a clown with a whipped cream pie. Some of the Free Press writers told me later that I should have thrown it, they would have bailed me out, but I think I chose the better path. I have so many cherished memories from the Grateful Dead. I was always in their dedicated kids' room backstage at all burial shows, making balloons for their kids. And once, when only Poindexter, Wavy Gravy, and a toddler were present, I had made a geodesic dome, and this toddler discovered the weightlessness of this sculpture and started moving it around the room with his forehead. A Bill Graham photographer stopped in and took a picture of it. Years later, I was telling this very story to a deadhead friend in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and he says, wait. And he grabs a magazine off of his bookshelf and opens it up, and there's the picture of the baby with the geodesic dome. Oh well, all I can say, folks, is always a hoot.
Our next speaker is Sue Anthony. Sue Anthony has been a career-long editor and writer, working for nonprofits, especially in healthcare, and for several years was a worship associate here at UUSF. Sue, where are you?
Thanks.
At eighth grade graduation, I was surprised to learn that I had been awarded an honorary title. The class had voted for the smartest, the most likely to succeed, and the best-looking students. The title I received was The Most Gullible. It was the least desirable of the available honorifics, but I was happy to be acknowledged at all. And I didn't think of myself as gullible, which I now believe is a qualifying characteristic of those who are gullible. Since then, I've proven myself worthy of the title a number of times. Just 3 notable examples. The New Jersey town that I grew up in had a characteristic that I didn't question until years later. The middle-class community was 100% white. It was snow white. Not only were there no people of color, there were no Jewish people whatsoever. Although the adjacent towns had lots of both. When the first Jewish family moved in, Jeannie Zeltzman was in my class. It was a noteworthy event. Gullibility was also on display early in my career when I signed on as a volunteer for the Richard Nixon presidential campaign. My job was painting cardboard signs. None of the women volunteers had important jobs, but it was fun to hear the excited talking, and every night there was a buffet of tuna fish sandwiches and sodas. At the time, I did have doubts about the Vietnam War, but somehow covered it over by assuring myself that our government must know what it's doing. And a final example, years later, when my husband built a family cabin in Mount Shasta, the last big task was to drill a well. We didn't know anything about that, so we consulted several neighbors. They said to hire a dowser to wave a forked stick, apply certain knowings, and pinpoint the spot to drill for underground water. The neighbors agreed on who was the most gifted of the local drowsers. So this gentleman came over and after a bit of magic, indicated exactly where to dig the well. And it worked. It didn't cross my mind that the high water table of the whole area made drilling for water a success each and every time. Gullibility, which I prefer to call naivete, offers certain blessings. It enables one to interact with people and listen fully to their theories on everything. This is a useful characteristic for Unitarian Universalists. Warning sensors are muffled. One can assume that people are essentially decent and what they tell you is likely to be true or true-ish or at least deserves a listening. Like at the theater, one can set aside reality and believe the characters are real. The inevitable downside of naivete is that once you come face to face with reality, the letdown is a hard drop. I won't forget the afternoon that changed everything. Although I grew up in the post-World War II era, there wasn't much talk about the war. I knew little about it until the day I knew too much. It came in the form of a magazine article with pictures describing the experiences of victims in the death camps of Eastern Germany and Poland. In that worn wooden chair at the telephone table in our small dining room, I came to understand that unspeakable cruelty, deliberate and planned, was real. Later, I read a great deal about history, both recent and ancient, and saw that much of history deals with cruel acts. Sometimes there was a byproduct of a larger goal, like conquering a city or region. But some cruelty, like torture of witches, prisoners, or others, seemed to be essentially for its own sake. What I noticed was that a single step toward cruelty would lead to others that made it worse. Hangings became burnings, and burnings were worsened by using greener wood to make the suffering last longer. In history, cruelty, like a snowball rolling downhill, picks up momentum as the lines of decency are crossed, extended, and crossed again. I don't think it's naive to say that eventually the tide turns. Enemies are defeated, or in the case of meaningless cruelty, people finally weary of the suffering they've helped bring about or watch from the sidelines. Sometimes it's a photograph, like that of the naked little girl desperately running from fiery explosions in Vietnam. Or it could be words like, "Have you no sense of decency, sir? At long last, have you left no sense of decency?" Sadly, we're not at that point yet. Every day as I read and hear the news, I realize that so many of the things I hold dear are in danger. If not this minute, then probably soon. I think of the institutions that have become bedrock. The dependable blue U.S. Postal Service mailbox at the top of my block. My public library branch, where the staff are so wonderful, it's all I can do to keep from hugging them. The public schools in my neighborhood and all over the city, where every kid is entitled to a high-quality education, regardless of race, gender, language, disability, or any other descriptor. The parks, the college and university systems that preserve a place for critical thinking. The safety of people all around us who lack papers or whose papers might be deemed not good enough. And of course, the journalists, columnists, and news outlets that we count on for information, always the most vulnerable targets in an autocratic takeover. No autocracy or kleptocracy can allow a free press to exist, and none ever has. For the moment, we still have so much that is worth protecting. Last Thursday, during the great rainstorm, my family and I went to a college women's basketball game. When we entered the auditorium, we were cold and wet, and it was immediately clear that something good was happening all around. The energy was palpable. Just before the game, the indigenous tribes of the area were recognized formally. Then the chorus from my granddaughter's middle school sang the national anthem. As the game started, I saw that the athletes on both teams displayed every skin color that humans have access to, as did the cheerleaders and the very large marching band, who all wore silly hats, obviously of their own design. During halftime, kids from a local Hebrew school displayed their own basketball skills. We bought salted pretzels warm from the oven. I found myself smiling. It's hard to think of a moment I've been happier. It would be easy to say that this scene is only available to America's elites or to the so-called woke. But I disagree. I think such things happen all over this country, in tiny towns and cities where the foods may be different, but the feeling the same. Perhaps I'm naive. In fact, it's been established that I am. But I believe that our democracy has something for us that can't and won't be canceled if we join forces as if our lives depended on it. Because we have a chance now. We might not get another one.
Thank you, Sue. It's hard to stay a tender soul and tough, and we need both, right? Our last speaker before our intermission is Robin Larsen. Robin A. Larsen has focused on journalism, film studies, and teaching. After earning a PhD at Temple, she taught communication studies at CSU at San Bernardino from 1995 to 2011. After moving to San Francisco to be near her daughter and family, she has been writing an historical mystery titled An Awful Sunday. Hopefully not based on a day here in church. Oh no, here it says, on the murder in 1870 in Omaha of her great-grandfather, Jeremiah McChaney. Robin.
Thanks very much to our august minister who introduced pretty much everything I was going to try to introduce. This part that I'm reading is from a very late chapter in this book that I keep writing interminably and hope that someday I will finish. It is about, he's talking, Jeremiah is still alive in this point, and from his point of view, as he talks, he's talking, engaging in talking therapy, which was actually a phrase used mostly for PTSD suffering Civil War, post-Civil War vets. And I sort of elaborated and said that a lot of early settlers who went to places like Nebraska were suffering from PTSD. So anyway, here I go. On a club route of a squatter on the Kuntz brothers' claim lots, I saw something. You know, we wear white sheets to cover our faces, yet some of our fellow citizen lawmen move so characteristically they can be recognized. One claim club member I'm sure I witnessed a few nights ago was George Lake, who slouches terribly on his horse. His setter is so loose, it is a wonder his horse doesn't shrug him off on the nearest cottonwood trunk as we ride for the Missouri to punish squatters. We were dunking James Mahoney for building his tar paper shack on the Kuntz's lot near 16th and Izard. What I noticed is that as we stopped near Reed's Land, where it meets the levee at Izard, Lake sidled next to our so-called culprit, Mahoney, and slipped him an envelope, a squatter being paid to squat and be punished. Thus, after we roped Mahoney around the neck and chest so tightly he was gasping, before we pushed him under the ice where he went face forward into the freezing, muddy waters that immediately pulled his body backward to run east with our old misery's vicious current. We dunked him and dunked him. Lake with the first hold on the rope and the last to quit pulling the poor man up and down and up and down. Then, when they placed Mahoney face down on the ice, Lake let him lie until Barker and I pulled him upright to make sure he was breathing and to keep his face from frostbite. The point of these nighttime visits is to keep order in our city so our founders can return when the money returns, build their plantations, even hire slaves or ex-slaves if they are of the Southern persuasion. Had I not my own compensation from Lake and some of the other money men in our club, I would tell someone about what Lake did. That is, pay off the culprit to squat. To what end? Surely such a culprit will be in Lake's debt for many years to come. First, for being on the take, and second, for acting out for the rest of us club members the state of being near death from drowning and freezing. For sure, this Judge Lake I thought so highly of is both grasping and duplicitous. To what does he owe his recent fame? Does he want to establish our Omaha city as his kingdom? Who are his co-conspirators in paying off newcomers to pretend to be squatters, who then get punished? Which of these squatters is real? The real ones must be lynched and hung, but what is to be done with these players beside dunking them? This dunking takes me back to witnessing the white boys in West Cork who dunked Protestant landlords, estate agents in the River Lee. That was a vigilante sort of punishment for collaborators. But here in Omaha, this Mahoney's dunking is rough justice in reverse. He is collaborating with Lake, who is rewarding him for breaking club rules. What a travesty! Our Omaha Claim Club is all we have standing between us and the kind of anarchy I saw in Molinahone, where evictees ambushed landlord agents in hand-to-hand combat while Protestant landlords mounted their hunters and ran down women and children on the roads. In the 1840s, I even saw these starving homeless eating the carcasses of their own dogs. Just as I piled Mahoney behind me on my horse and rode him away to our rude jail for squatters behind our pioneer block, I saw the glitter of Lake's eyes through the slits of his white hood, and I felt a chill run up my spine. Does Lake know what I'm thinking? Does he want me to stop being a club watchman? What if he has learned about my part in the Young Irelander uprising against the British constabulary at Glengarry? In this year of 1858, all of 10 years past then, does he care? Surely I am not the only England-hating Irishman among us. Surely, he must know, one can hate a regime, but like its individual citizens. I want to reap the reward of my Protestant legacy here, not still feel England's heel upon my neck.
Caminando, caminando. Can you sing caminando? Can you say caminando? If you can say it, you can sing it. Caminando, caminando. Right, nice. Vamos caminando hacia el sol. Vamos caminando hacia el sol. Try it. Vamos caminando hacia el sol. Caminando. Caminando, caminando. The last one's a little faster. Vamos caminando hacia la libertad. Try it. Vamos caminando hacia la libertad. Very nice. And remember, vowels. Ah, e. Let's try this song. This is a little parenthesis. In the Zoom, you know how it's really hard to sing together, so we devised this way of singing together. Just one note. It could harmonize. One vowel. Ready? All together. 1, 2, 3. Ooh, very nice. Good warm-up. Caminando. Caminando, caminando, vamos, vamos caminando hacia el sol. Caminando, caminando a la libertad. Vamos caminando hacia la libertad. Caminando means walking, and in the spirit of solidarity with people who don't have legs, moving, right? Or use crutches or skateboards. Like in Tijuana, the kids don't have legs, they use skateboards to run around selling their wear and tear. Caminando, caminando, walking towards the sun. Vamos caminando hacia el sol. And crutches. Caminando, caminando, moving towards liberty. Vamos caminando hacia la libertad. Oh, a mí me gusta cantar, a mí me gusta caminar, a mí me gusta cantar. I like to sing that. I like to walk. I like to sing that we make our road as we walk, as we move. There's no recipes for us. Que el camino lo vas haciendo al caminar. Vamos. Caminando, caminando, vamos, vamos caminando hacia el sol. Caminando, caminando, vamos caminando hacia la libertad. You know, I have this thought that one day the Proud Boys will actually become men. And when they become men, like 2 of them will have committed suicide because they realize what the fuck they did. And then 1 will probably be on drugs and stuff, just out of the trauma. But like 3 of them will run like recovering racist groups around the country. One will write a book about the Proud Boys called Capital Sin. Caminando, caminando, vamos, vamos caminando hacia el sol. Caminando, caminando a la paz. Vamos caminando hacia la paz. And this is a zipper song. In organizing, a zipper song is a song where you keep the same refrain, like this little light of mine, we shall overcome, and then you zip in the operative word. No hay camino ya hecho, pero hay brecha preparada. There is no road already made for us, but there's little paths open. So I'm going to ask you to stand with me for this one. And I'm going to ask you, if you can, if you feel comfortable. If not, don't worry. And then I want to ask you to think of a name of a human being, historic, real, current, on whose shoulders you stand. You're here because of that person. You stand on those shoulders. Can you think of that name? Okay, we're going to practice. I'm just going to count to 3, and we're going to say it very loud. 1, 2, 3. Ooh, good. Very good. So, here we go. No hay camino ya hecho, pero hay brecha preparada. Nuestros mártires la abrieron. No road already made, but the little paths opened by those on whose shoulders we stand. Can you say that name very loud? 1, 2, 3. Stronger. Stronger. Ho! And how did they open it? ¿Cómo abrieron? Caminando. Walking, moving. Caminando. Caminando. La jornada. Caminando, caminando, vamos, vamos caminando hacia el sol. Caminando, caminando a la libertad. Vamos caminando hacia la libertad. Oh.
Well, it's time for Mike and Mari. Woo!
I get the tallest.
Thank you for that long introduction.
She read our bio.
This next piece is dedicated to Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
It's called Oh Doctor.
Hello, I'm Dr. Cavity.
Oh, I'm Tina. Cavity. That's quite a name for a dentist.
It's a cavity with a K.
That helps. It's like going to Dr. Insomnia or Dr. Eczema.
Actually, I know Dr. Eczema. He's a head of dermatology at USF. Good doctor.
I found you on Groupon.
Great. I love my groupies. Let's just cut the chit-chat, shall we? Open wide. When was the last time you saw a dentist?
Oh, it's been a while. I think Bush was still president.
Well, judging by the tartar on your teeth, looks like Bush 41.
Oh, I told you, it's been a while. Dentists make me nervous.
I'll get in line. Now, open wide.
Aren't you going to put on a mask?
Why would I put on a mask?
COVID, the flu.
Anybody who's got it. Besides, I'm fine. See, I can smell. So, open wide.
Well, aren't you going to put on gloves?
It's like typing with mittens. I hate them.
Oh, what is that?
What?
Is that blood on your fingers?
Is it? No, it's ketchup. I went to Jack in the Box. It scared me.
Oh, go wash your hands.
What for? I took a shower this morning. A person can overdo it, you know? Stop distracting me. Let's have a look at those teeth.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, I think I have a cavity right in the front.
That one?
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. That one's fine.
Well, it doesn't feel fine. Why don't you take an x-ray?
An x-ray. Do you know how much those machines cost? Look, I've been doing this a long time. I go with my gut. I have a feeling in my gut that one's okay.
But it hurts. It's very sensitive to hot and cold.
And I have a feeling about that other tooth on the other side. Yeah, we got to pull it.
Why? There's nothing wrong with that tooth. That one doesn't hurt at all.
Well, maybe not, but I got a bad feeling about it.
Really, Doc? I think you should take an x-ray.
X-ray? Forget it. I'm not taking any x-ray. I went to the University of Phoenix. See that degree on my wall? I am like really, really smart. So if my gut says that the tooth's gotta go, the tooth has gotta go.
Okay, why don't you put that suction thing in my mouth so I won't drool so much?
Look, don't worry your pretty little head about drool.
Well, where's that little bowl with the swirling water? I really need to spit.
Spit anywhere you like. It's a free country. Look, nobody in this practice is gonna take away your right to spit anywhere you want to.
Okay.
All right, now let me just get that little sharp thingy and we'll make that mouth of yours great again.
Wait, don't wipe it on your pants. That's supposed to be kept sterile.
Sterile? You know, people say that my instruments are the most sterile instruments of all time. Nobody knew they could be so sterile. I mean, who knew? Other dentists call me late at night, say, sir, yours are the most sterile instruments in the history of dentistry. No one has more instruments more sterile than you. Now open wide.
Shouldn't you give me Novocaine first?
Why would I give you Novocaine? I don't feel anything.
But it's gonna hurt.
Look, I've done 3 patients this morning and I didn't feel a thing. You're just working yourself up.
You know what? I just remembered. I gotta see a man about a thing.
Well, what about your tooth?
Oh, funny. You know, it's all better.
Damn, I'm good. Look, let's celebrate, shall we? Nitrous oxide on the house?
Oh, thanks, but I really gotta go.
All right, that'll be $650.
$650? But you said you take insurance.
Oh, that's with insurance.
Oh, God. You know what? I think I will have some of that nitrous oxide.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, reader, is Bruce Neuburger. Does anyone know Bruce Neuburger here? Woo, Bruce! Bruce is a retired teacher, author of 2 books, Lettuce Wars and Postcards to Hitler, A German Jew's Defiance in a Time of Terror. He's also authored articles on immigration, racial justice, and the Palestine-Israel conflict in Counterpunch and other venues. And he is a force here at the church in making moments like this and our witness events possible again and again and again. So with much gratitude and joy, we welcome you to the podium.
Thank you, Vanessa. A lot to live up to here. You've had a little bit of laughter today. I'm going to bring you into a different emotion. It's all too obvious that fascism relies on hatred and division. MAGA fascists focused on immigrants and migrants to direct their divisive hatred. I worked for 10 years in the fields among those being criminalized and demonized. So if you detect a little bit of anger in this piece I'm about to read you called On Migration, you'll know why. Homo sapiens have been migrating for at least 70,000 years. We are a migratory species, more migratory than our Neanderthal or Denisovan cousins, who, as far as we can tell, never made it to the American continent or Australia, let alone Polynesia, Tobago, the Aleutian Islands, or Oahu. We are adept at moving. Nearly every ecological niche, from the Amazon basin to the highland glaciers and the Arctic tundra, were settled by our migrant ancestors. They became Germans and Chinese and Tongans, Maoris, Aboriginals, Tasmanians, Guarani, Quechua, Koreans, Koryaks, Burmese, and 1,000 other peoples. Whether 40,000 years ago or 40 months ago, it's all about migration. Those who migrated to the European continent from Africa, those tens of thousands of years ago, themselves became migrants in the modern era. Europeans, beginning with the Spanish and Portuguese, later the French, the Belgians, the Brits, the Dutch, left their regions to travel, but they weren't called migrants. They were called discoverers, adventurers, buccaneers, seafarers, conquerors, investors, merchants, settlers, and pioneers. They spread across the globe where no borders existed. They never asked permission, nor had to. They discovered, so it is said, but never invaded. They expropriated, but never stole. They claimed land that had henceforth been the birthright of common humanity and made it their private property, invoking the doctrine of discovery bestowed on them by feudal religious lords called popes. And so began the era of colonialism. They took the land, the resources, the gold, the silver, any metal with a monetary value, and they took the people in chains and transformed them into commodities and sold them as well. Everything became a commodity, and the lands they explored or wandered seized and settled. Such was the glory of the rosy dawn of capitalism. In the 527 years since European migrants began to colonize the planet, they took 110,000 tons of silver and 15 million shackled bodies and left no IOUs. The $262 trillion worth of wealth in current dollars they plucked and repatriated was a tidy sum to fund their industries, build their militaries, construct their monuments and universities, palaces and towers, and endow the scholars and scribes who embellished their heroism and glorified their wealth while ignoring its source. By the 1880s, these most flourishing nations and their prodigal offspring, America, controlled 80% of the world's financial wealth, made from coerced and free labor and products of the earth transformed by capitalist alchemy into pounds and lira, pesos and francs, rubles and marks and dollars. Amassed were riches beyond anything a fable could conceive of at one end of the world, while monumental poverty beyond description gathered at the other. As one historian noted wryly, Europe did not develop the colonies developed Europe. When religious justification for this mendacious thievery could no longer serve as an acceptable defense, they invented others. They took note of skin color, hair texture, eye shape, lip and nose contours, language and cultural variations, and invented something they called race to sort out those to elevate and those to debase. They drew demarcations called borders and defined those in and those out, not only by their national differences, but by their human value as well. Prejudice dressed itself in legal language, and laws enforced the prejudice. A vocabulary emerged to brand each division with an appropriate label. It was the explorer versus the savage, the conqueror versus the barbarian, the civilizer versus the brutes. And so that today we have businessmen versus aliens, retirees versus illegals, and expats versus wetbacks. Each year, $3 trillion migrates silently and invisibly from the poorer countries to the wealthier ones. It does so without ever being stopped by an agent in a green uniform or a barbed wire barrier, but slips quietly into banks and vaults in the marbled edifices of empire. Not so the migrants who follow in the wake of that fleeing wealth, desperate to earn a few pesos, quetzales, lempiras, cordovas, gordas, soles, or reales to augment the diminished sustenance of their battered lands. It is they who cross the blistering deserts, wade the swift currents of rivers, sit for weeks in muddy encampments, hoping for a call, only to endure the indignities of a uniformed agent yelling, "Levántate, perros!" It's the modern-day migrant that must move when their homelands have become hells on earth by plunder and climate catastrophe and other byproducts of this monstrous organism we call the free enterprise. What do Nicaragua, Iraq, Afghanistan, Korea, Vietnam, Lebanon, Haiti, Panama, the Dominican Republic, Guatemala, El Salvador, Mexico, Cuba, Puerto Rico, the Philippines have in common? They have all had their borders violated by U.S. troops sent to establish the order of proper commercial relations or restore it when the economic plunder produced political upheaval. Those armies never asked permission to cross, never waited their turn to enter, never filled out an asylum application, never were made to sleep on the bare floor of a chilled room, never hired a lawyer, never had to remain hidden, never feared being detained, never languished in a detention center, never rode in the back of a pickup truck under a load of dirty rags, never were handcuffed and thrown into the back of an immigration van, were never chased through the fields, never thrown into a ditch to drown or hid in a safe house fearing rape, never beaten by thieves, never suffocated in the back of a big rig. Those troops, at times referred to by the ungratefully invaded as Yankees, secured the tyrants and corporate plunders or slaughtered the rebels who dared rise against them, but they were always, always, always the defenders of our freedom. During World War II, several million Mexican migrants came north, contracted to work in the U.S. fields and railroad yards. They were not referred to as human beings, but rather as braceros, brazos, for the arms they used to sow and harvest the crops. The braceros made possible the U.S. victory in that World War by supplying a nation with food, but there have never been any bracero anniversaries complete with presidential proclamations lauding their heroism, no ticker tape parades organized by a grateful nation thanking them for their service, no wreaths laid by the tombs of those who died from their toil and mistreatment, no. If the bracero was spoken of at all, it was to vilify them for daring to stay within the U.S. borders to become illegals. Woody Guthrie sang about how these workers were chased like outlaws, like rustlers, like thieves, if they dared to leave at the end of their contracts, and then were only mentioned in the news when their lifeless bodies were recovered and sent across the border as deportees. It is said that since 2008, 22.5 million people have fled their homes seeking respite from climate disasters. If all the people forced to leave their homelands were brought together as a nation, it would be the fourth largest on Earth. And this is not from some uncontrollable disaster of nature, but rather because of a man-made disaster caused by, and let's not be afraid to call it by its name, capitalism, imperialism. This is a system that turns the sacred into something crass, embraced if profitable, discarded if not, that hurls nations against each other in a frenzied search for competitive advantage or lethal edge, that uses and abuses immigrants as cheap labor and toxic propaganda. Can this obsolete enterprise that lies at the bottom of all this misery be brought to a merciful end so that the wealth humanity has created with its collective ingenuity might benefit those who fashioned it with their efforts and skill? That is, humanity as a whole, so that Guatemalans, Hondurans, Haitians, Congolese, Cambodians, Cubans, Venezuelans, Mexicans, Salvadorans, Colombians, Ukrainians, Russians, Italians, Turks, Moroccans, Palestinians, Chileans, Timorese, Americans, Laotians, Latvians, Bolivians, Bengalese, and all the other variations of our migratory or settled kin might find a place to live and prosper in their own parts of our beautiful but abused planet, to enjoy the fruits of that which we have always produced together. Yes, wealth has always been a cooperative and collective enterprise of our wandering, migrating, hopeful, wondering, quarreling, yet cooperative species we call Homo sapiens. Might that cooperative reality become the foundation of organized political structures, as revolutionaries like Avakian advocate, so that those who may wander or migrate, or may not, yet may find peace and prosperity in a sustainable land where we can cherish and appreciate each other in this world, which, in the words of Carl Sagan, is the only home we've ever known.
Thank you, Bruce. Our next reader is Kathleen McClung. Kathleen is the author of 6 collections of poetry. Her most recent book, Questions of Buoyancy, launched last fall. I think some of these books are sold in the back, and I think you were on the left for folks who want to look at the collections on the way out if you didn't on the way in. And a new collection, Climbing the Fire Escape, Flipping the Raft, Poems on Women in Movies, is forthcoming later this year. She serves as an editor of The MacGuggin, a literary journal based in Michigan, and she teaches at Skyline College, at Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, and privately. Kathleen, welcome.
What an honor to read with Bruce Neuburger and all of my comrades here at San Francisco Unitarian Universalism Church. I'm going to read 2 poems that have nothing whatsoever to do with President's Day or with fascism, but they have everything to do with everyday people like you and me, and the resilience, resourcefulness, and courage that we need in these times of catastrophe. The 2 poems I'm going to read are historical persona poems based on a real incident in 1888 off the coast of California near Santa Cruz. You may know that there is a lighthouse on Nuevo Island that's now abandoned and inhabited only by sea lions. But in 1888, there was a working lighthouse with a fog whistle, and the 2 lighthouse keepers drowned in a small boat, leaving their wives and children stranded alone on the island. The families survived. My 2 poems about these families come from Questions of Buoyancy, which I wrote during Donald Trump's first term, when I was searching constantly for ways to stay strong and focused, ways to persist, and ways to resist. And I believe the women in these poems do all of that, and I hope these poems inspire us to continue to persist and resist in these times ahead. Whistlekeepers, 1883. We all drown. Before sinking into earth or water, we work, raise children, sing and weep, nurse the afflicted, repair a boat, christen it with a woman's name. My own name is lost. Yes, I am Mrs. Colburn in every sheriff's report, passed across oak desks, across years of sun and fog. Yes, we have a tale. Mrs. Ashley and I have a tale. Wives of whistlekeepers posted to Año Nuevo Island. Ordinary wives of quiet men, Henry and Bernard. Solemn men, they never raised their voices, took only a drop of rum on holidays, no fog of drunkenness, no bellowing rage, steady, like a boat just finished, not yet at sea. Readers all, we 4 could pass a clear evening in silence once the children slept, lost in The Tempest or Moby Dick by lamplight, as our children, lost in their dreams, twitched in their cradles. Husbands and wives swimming peaceably through pages, words like harpoon and magic streaming past. Other nights, the men tended the steam whistle, raised its blast from hot coals for 10 seconds every minute into the thick weave of sky. Grand boats smashed to bits years before, the Sir John Franklin, the Koya in California fog. We'd read the stories as schoolgirls, dreamed of gold coins glinting in fog, trunks of soft pelts tumbling onto beaches, handsome sailors lost among octopus on the ocean floor. On October 8th, our husbands rowed a boat to the mainland for supplies, more leather-bound books for their wives, fresh artichokes, strawberry jam, a real china doll for Ida, sharp razors to scrape away their beards. We busied ourselves scrubbing pots, passed the spring day as any other, industrious, aproned. Pelicans passed low over our heads. We pinned wash on the line. No fog, but forceful gales, tall waves. The baby colicky as the last rays of sun drained from the sky. Did he know his father would be lost in the morning? Did he know we women, friends, mothers, wives, would witness the small boat whirling and bobbing in rough water? A boat named Ophelia, full of food and gifts. Henry had painted our fine and only boat before the birth of our son. It carried our men out to thrashing open sea, past our island of New Year, past our cries, our reach. Wives flow into widows every hour. Some keen and howl, curl tight within caves of fog, but we could not. We must signal, we agreed. Bring a ship to us, or we are lost. First, the flag. We lowered the salted cloth, spun it upside down, raised it again, half-mast. Then, the fog whistle we wives had memorized but never used until that bright April day. We raised the alarm, beckoned to distant boats. We have lost treasure to the sea. Find us. Do not sail past. And this second poem I'm going to read is the sequel, and it's told in the voice of the daughter, Ida, whose father drowned, bringing back a doll for her in the boat. And this is called Ida's Song 1945, and I imagine Ida as an old woman in 1945 speaking this poem. Ida's Song 1945. Surely strange to his crew, ragged shrieks of fog whistle on a cloudless day. Through his spyglass, the captain discerned the flag upside down on our island, a distress signal he knew from years at sea. Perhaps they carried pistols, the sailors he dispatched. She never said, my mother. Perhaps she saw through grief only shoulders, heads, and faces. One had red hair, she said, and one had none at all. And I? What do I remember of the day my father drowned? Small, not yet 5, I grew dizzy, whirling among seagulls that day, impatient for the new doll from town, the one with the prettiest face my father had promised, hunkered down beside me on the dock before rowing away with Mr. Colburn. Never break your word, my mother instructed with my numbers, my ABCs. Yet my father broke his. Returning home, his boat capsized. The sea, I learned, broke every word. We left the island, all of us, my mother and I, Mrs. Colburn and her baby. I never wanted to come back, never wanted to pass another day among the gulls, the sea lions barking, barking. A sheriff wrote down the facts. 2 whistle keepers, widows, castaways, linked arms, faced tragedy with valor, sounding the whistle for help. Were their faces grim or streaked with tears? I remember the swish of skirts, but cannot see their eyes. I hear still the rumble of waves as I sit down to write each new whistle keeper's wife a note of welcome, wishing her all good fortune on Año Nuevo Island. I tell her about the day the ocean stole him, about the contours of rescue. I never ask if a doll has floated up beside the dock, never burden her with keepsakes unkept. My own face now lined with age, my daughter's far from here. Each day I read news of air raids, submarine battles in the North Sea, top secret work in New Mexico. Perhaps this bomb we build will end all wars, perhaps all life. I hear talk in recent letters of closing down the lighthouse when the war ends. They will not tear down the keeper's house itself. No, it will open to the seals, who never need chairs, lamps, or doors. And the barking will go on all through the night, in every room where women's faces and men's once rested on pillows, once whispered or dreamed. And the sea will roar back, not an answer, not a song, every day, after all of us sink down into the earth or water, beloved faces, bones, and ash only, words kind or cruel, never spoken again. Day will break, fog will form, no stranger to the sea. Stay strong, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Now, another of our special guests, Genny Lin, was inaugurated this month as San Francisco's 9th Poet Laureate and is the first Chinese American to serve in that role. Born and raised in San Francisco, Genny is the second-generation daughter of Chinese immigrants. A graduate of San Francisco State and Columbia University, she has been widely awarded and punished. She is poet, playwright, performer, educator, activist whose work centers on the Asian American community, specifically Chinese Americans. We're thrilled to have you with us, Genny.
Great. It's truly an honor to be here amongst you, and I really enjoyed learning and hearing what you've all had to say this morning and this afternoon. And Bruce's piece was a perfect preface to what I'm going to share about the commencement of colonialism and settler colonialism. The old world. In the garden I will die, in the rose bush they will kill me. Federico Garcia Lorca. Before the ships came with their gunners, muskets, and cannons, with their powder, shots, and shells acquired with paper money and credit in a foreign land called the Old World, the foliage was thick with toucans, cockatoo, parrots, dolphins, and turtles, unafraid of humans. They swarmed and cavorted in the waves. The trees swelled with ripe jackfruit, papaya, and mango in this jungle of quiet content. There was a century of art and magic, gold-leafed codices in sacred glyphs, waiting to be learned, now burned. Musicians, shaman, painters, poets, prophets, whose lives flashed with the morning glory's brief bloom, slaughtered. Their brown gods mutilated. We were waiting to be born in the dawn of extinction, in the moonless night of iron bullets, horses' hooves, shackles. They say that crying originated in loneliness, and from crying came song. The hair of warriors who shot their arrows and sang songs to the Creator as they stared into the cannon fire, unflinching, was scalped with their skulls hung on poles. They would follow the Lord of Dawn in their perilous journey to hell. They said You could hear their crying songs echo in the night. The chief had given the order to kill themselves before being captured. They thought of home, recalling the days of their youth when desperate in love and passion that ignited them with the flames of 1,000 lightning bolts. They had the power to seize thunder, and now they were lovers trapped in the ill winds of time, singing their last songs, the end drawing near with the rope tightened, dangling from the noose of an enemy whose rapacious hunger never seemed to cease. The map of the world was drawn in a heartbeat with the blood of the ancient world, now named the New World, a world of black thunder, a world inherently white. Tears would end this world. To be unhappy in love is what it is to be an exile, a refugee. The only death that kills is exile. They would not surrender. They would not stop being born from the roots of the Seba, from the 13 roofs of heaven, from the mountains to the sea, from the pyramid of memories beating in the bleeding heart of the jungle. The scream. I felt a large scream pass through nature, Edward Munch. How would Munch have known 135 years ago that soundless howl, that cry of anguish concealed in everyone and everything, like some wild, wounded beast captured in beeswax, paraffin, and gum pastels? The self-annihilation, that powerful and beautiful natural order of things receding into chaotic flight in recoiling terror. Only the crows and gulls seem to know their sinister caws and flapping of wings etched in things to come. How did we come to take this route? If the screech of crows sounds like the scream of someone being hung, the scream of nature is the sound of madness, a river at its breaking point, an earth-shattering roar, limitless and inhuman, sweeping everything away, fragmenting memory, dispatching death without justice or partiality in the time it takes a pot of water to boil. The cry, the scream, the howl. War. War is madness, you ask yourself. What lies beyond the power of a bomb, beyond the artillery of words, beyond the firing squad of the liberator who hands you a map in exchange for your land? What is empire but the slaughterhouse of dreams in a kingdom of illusion that feeds the hungry ego? The president yells, "Rise!" beating his chest in the custom of chief guerrilla, and everyone rises. He raises the flag of victory over the wounded and countless innocents as if their blood was the biblical parting of the Red Sea. War doesn't forgive. It repeats itself in the delusional formula of its stunted imagination. To usurp history from nature, to conquer her law of cause and effect, as if killing was heroic and fighting the endgame for peace. War is death stowed in malignant bowels, its mangled limbs, smoldering roofs, iron windows that only bullets and bombs penetrate. It is black clouds of meaningless, destitute suffering in a demented fever for power from which history will lose with its blind possession of memory. From here to Gaza, death never saw itself coming. Only the eerie silence just before heaven blew up and the olive trees burst into flames. At that interminable moment, all the exits of Gaza were sealed, and the key to your home became a souvenir in the mausoleum of your dreams. when the roof of darkness caved in, the Sea of Galilee turned red, and there was nowhere to go. Time was a thief of your memory that froze. Little did you know the terror in your heart had been there all along from birth, like a little mouse trapped in a cage. Little did we Americans know that the distance from here to Gaza was an illusion, and that the border between Palestine and Israel did not truly exist ever, except in fiction. History is occupied territory, and whoever lives to tell it is the victor. There are no more lions, only hunters with a power over life and death. What is left? Only stories of the flower of Jericho, only the place where Jesus fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. You've nothing but stories to fill the empty Temple Mount. Your hunger echoes in its desecrated ground and through the tunnels of insurgent prayers, never to be satisfied until the river returns to the sea and the right of return is reality. You know that moment when life returns with the infallibility of spring, because your spirit will soar on the chords of the wind and life will know itself becoming. Photograph of Gaza. A little brown girl crawls out of the abyss of her home. From afar, she could be a sparrow blown from a nest, or a frond severed from a charred palm. She's crawling inch by inch with her broken wings. She cannot stop crawling in search of spring. She cannot stop digging through the rubble with her ashen memory, trapped at the bottom of an abandoned well, by the stone steps where perfumed lavender and rosemary once swelled in her nostrils, where the smell of her mother's taboon once streamed through the kitchen window, and where the sunflower once lifted her bright yellow face towards the burning heat of 1,000 suns in search of dawn. This one, Not in Our Name, I collaborated with the incredible muralist Juana Alicia, and we mounted it in Clarion Alley and several spots along near the BART station in Oakland and in the Mission. And her illustration has all these women holding up shrouds of bodies, and Not in Our Name. Everywhere in Gaza, people are gasping, dying of hunger, for there's nothing, not even a tiny piece of bread in the desert of ruins. Everywhere in Palestine, mothers and children are dying of thirst, for there is not even a drop of rain to eke from these dark clouds of oppression. The length of a day to a dying child is 1,000 years, for childhood is buried in a nameless white shroud. What lives in Palestine lives not at the mercy of men, but in the courage of resistance. For what is the sound of the heart breaking? It is the sound of a mother's cry. For what is the sound of devastation? It is the wind howling through the olive trees. It is the weeping of mothers mourning childhood lost in the shadow of bombs. And why? History closes its eyes but does not answer. The thief has banned truth and kept the world hostage. Keep going. What lives in memory lives in the unvanquished hope of return. What lives in the heart lives not in form or memory, but in eternity. We will exist. And what lives in infamy lives not in our name. Thank you. I collaborated with Him Mark Lai, Judy Young, who unfortunately both passed away some years ago, in a collection of poems that I translated with him, Mark Lai, from Angel Island. They were written in Chinese, and we translated in a book called Island, Poetry and History of Chinese Immigrants on Angel Island from 1910 to 1940. And if you want a copy of the book, over on the left, Harvey Dong and V. Dong are coming from East Wind Books, and they have a few copies on hand. And it has the oral histories of the Chinese, and they are really the first Chinese poets in America. And so it's a very important history, and their poems are very important for that reason. And you will find out that they are not the passive model Chinese Americans that we were taught we were, that they were quite enraged about the Chinese Exclusion Act and how it really vilified them as heathen Chinese, and there's a long history of that. And it sort of, for me, culminated in some way with the anti-Asian violence that triggered by a lot of the rhetoric coming from the far right and Trump. So this piece, Requiem, is about memory. Memory is a grieving mother searching for her lost child. No one knows that inside of her is a rose that never dies, a truth that burns through the sleepwalk of time. Beyond the fallen trees and swollen branches of figs is a girl who lives in the clouds. Her dark eyes roam the night, and the moon and the stars will echo her sad stories. Even the wind is afraid to sigh, lest she stops remembering. What binds the noose from the clansman to the hanged man? It's fear. But what issues from a wound is the same blood, often of the same mother or father? Though one is destined to crack the whip and the other to groan and shuffle. Memory is a horse in search of its rider. If not for that cat's cradle of illusions, that contraband history written by thieves, who would argue the beginnings of things, the names of things before they were renamed? The unholy spark of revolt on a Birmingham Sunday, the jet black emptiness inside of a slave hold, the ring of gunshots in a safe house, at the border, at a checkpoint on a city street. Memory is a grieving mother searching for her lost child. No one knows that deep inside her is a rose that will never die, a truth that burns through the thorns of time. Beyond the fallen trees and swollen breeze is a girl who lives in our imagination, with dark eyes that own the night. The moon and the stars hang on her every word. Even the wind is afraid to die, lest she stops remembering. And that is the role of us artists and poets. We can't change the world, but we could protect the memory of our people, of the oppressed. And if that memory is lost, there's nothing to save, there's nothing to protect. The Heart Sutra is called the Prajnaparamita Sutra. Einstein decoded the sutras and tantras. E equals MC2. Energy and mass are of one thing and can change into each other. Outer space is inner space, and inner space is outer space. Form is emptiness, and emptiness is form. Emptiness is memory. Memories are shadows cast in the footprints of time. Without memory, there's no history. Without history, there is no self to suffer the wounds of our losses in our flesh and our hearts. History isn't big enough or long enough to carry the caskets of collateral despair, to the march of battling hymns, to the war drums beating from the armies of profit and illusion. Caesar, Napoleon, Hitler, Vietnam, Iraq. Afghanistan, Ukraine, Gaza. Like footprints in space, the smoke of burning empires race to extinction. E equals MC2. There's no birth, no death. The white lotus rises from the ashes of karma, from the charnel ground of sorrow. The fallen awaken in the resolute dawn to grieve, sing, love, and resurrect memory. Form is no other than emptiness. Emptiness is no other than form. Gate, gate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha. Gone, gone to the other shore. Paragate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha. The river is wide, I cannot cross. Neither do I have wings to fly. Give me a boat that can carry two, and both shall row, my love and I. Love is gentle and love is kind, the sweetest flower that ever grew. But love grows old and waxes cold and fades away like the morning dew. There is a boat that sails the sea. She's loaded deep as deep can be, but not as deep as the love I'm in. I know not how I'll sink or swim. This is an Irish song about migrations, and either we migrated this long trail for thousands of years with the DNA that we all share as one mankind, as one family, and hope we find our way back to our community, our family. I'm going to end with this piece, The Eye of the Needle. It's a Hafez-inspired poem. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. Pharaoh, we are at the desert's end. Like lonely birds, we carry the weight of the ages, the bones and particles of our songs and memories, the rivers and valleys of vast continents and eras, born on our two wings. Pharaoh, we are like blind men unable to see the needle, much less able to enter its eye. Let the camels go before us. Let the sheep follow suit. The rich are loath to touch the hand of God with their hands already full. The blind cannot see his hand, much less its light to give them wisdom. Pharaoh, we are at the Nile's end. Let the divine music of your soul lift the burden of our hearts. Let the haunting rhythm of your invocation ululate on our tongues and enter our bodies like oxygen. Dear one, come. Please, dear one, come. Thank you all very much.
Well, a quick thank you to everybody who made today possible, to our organizers and artists. A special gratitude for Genny Lim and for Francisco Herrera for joining us. And Francisco's going to help us conclude today. Before I let him do that, I'm just going to remind folks that next Sunday at 12:30, Francisco's actually going to be leading a program right here on Nuevo Sol Day Laborers, the organization, domestic workers organization. So come hear more about that incredible work of partnership to support one another, the kind of partnerships we need to be investing in increasingly to build solidarity in the community and strength and resiliency. And when we're all done today, if you can help out all of us by putting stuff in recycling, and folks can linger and look at the books that are available, but don't linger too long because this room actually has to be flipped so that it's home for 70 of our unhoused neighbors to be warm and fed and safe, and our staff needs to be able to do that. So in solidarity with the workers of the world, enjoy each other's company, but not too long. All right.
Let's thank Vanessa and all the organizers, Bruce, all the folks, Mike and Mari. So, as a Chicano, I always like to sing this song as a tribute to African-American sisters and brothers who've taught us how to be resilient through the worst of times. And we learned from the Underground Railroad. And in tune with this theme, also a use of the arts, because this song, when I sing, you all know, was actually a code song for when it was time for the Underground Railroad to be coming by. And it's inspired from the book of Isaiah. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Thank you, Genny. God's gonna trouble the water. Hey. Oh. One more time, ready? Wade in the water, wade in water, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Now who them children dressed in red? God's gonna trouble the water. Must be the children that Ishmael led. God's gonna trouble the water. Oh, waiting, waiting the water, children, waiting the water. God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Now who then children dressed in white? God's gonna water. Must be the children that crossing the night. Yeah, waiting the water, waiting, children waiting the water. God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Now who them children dressed in black gonna trouble? Must be my people and we ain't turning back. Yeah, waiting the water, waiting the water, children, wait in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water. God is gonna trouble the water. Gracias. Let's put these chairs down now.